report and how we can encourage them to speak up. It really digs into the reasons.
Yeah, it lays out all these emotional and psychological things that make it so hard to report.
Exactly. And you know where it starts. Fear.
Oh, yeah.
Like serious fear, retaliation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if you speak up, it could get so much worse.
And it's not just like some imagined fear. It's real, especially when you think about like power dynamics.
Yeah.
Like say your bully is also like your boss.
Oh.
Talk about high stakes, right? The article really gets into how tough those situations are.
It's like you're trapped, almost. And it makes you think, how can we as, just people make a difference? Like, how do we make someone feel safe enough to even think about coming forward?
That's the key question. And it goes right to the next thing the article talks about, weaponized shame. Like, bullying can make you feel so ashamed.
Yeah.
Like it's your fault somehow.
It's awful how many people internalize that.
Yeah. Yeah. And think about when the bullying is like less obvious,
Right.
like online harassment or just these little digs that make you question yourself.
Totally.
It's so sneaky because it makes the victim doubt what they're even experiencing. Like, am I overreacting or is this really bullying? Maybe it's just me. It's so isolating.
Do you ever think, like, maybe we're misinterpreting stuff, like someone's withdrawn or acting different? Could it be bullying they're just too ashamed to talk about?
It could be. We've got to pay attention to those little cues, Sometimes what's not said is the loudest.
And even if you get past the fear and the shame, there's still the worry of not being believed.
Mm-hmm.
The article says victims are afraid people will think they're exaggerating or making stuff up.
It's sad but true. We've seen it happen. Victims get doubted and questioned like they need to prove what they went through.
Ugh, it's like they haven't been through enough already. Makes you think, how do we react when someone confides in us? Are we really listening? Or are we, like, secretly demanding proof?
That's a good question to ask ourselves. It reminds me of that childhood fear of being a tattletale.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yes.
It's like drilled into us that reporting someone, even if they're wrong, is breaking some code.
Right. But the article makes a really important point. Reporting bullying isn't tattling to get someone in trouble.
Okay.
It's about protecting yourself or protecting someone else from being hurt.
Self-preservation.
Exactly.
We need to change how we think about that, especially for kids. Like, how do we help them understand the difference between speaking up for the right reasons and just trying to get someone in trouble?
It's about teaching them that they have a right to feel safe. And that can be hard when you think about the power dynamics in bullying.
Right.
The article spends a lot of time on that.
It gets really complicated because when the bully has power over you, social status, physical strength, even just popularity, the stakes are so high.
You got it.
Yeah.
Think about a student being bullied by a star athlete.
Yikes.
Speaking up could mean social suicide problems in class, maybe even a physical retaliation.
That's terrifying.
The risks are huge.
So it's not just fear of the bully themselves. It's fear of the fallout.
Yeah, all the consequences.
Makes you wonder how much of that plays out in more subtle ways as adults, too.
Definitely. Like, are there unspoken power dynamics at work or in our friend groups that make people hesitant to speak up?
Whoa. It's scary to think about. And this is what I found the most worrying part of the article. The idea that sometimes victims don't even realize they're being bullied.
This is where the psychology of bullying gets wild and kind of disturbing. If someone's been in a toxic situation for too long, they might start to see the abuse as normal. It's a coping mechanism.
So they downplay it, tell themselves it's not that bad, maybe even blame themselves.
Exactly. And that denial makes it almost impossible to break free because you don't see yourself as a victim. You've accepted the bully's story as your own.
That's heavy stuff, But the article doesn't just leave us hanging with all the bad stuff.
Right.
He talks about things we can do to actually help people come forward.
Totally. It's not all doom and gloom. It shifts gears and gives us some concrete steps to encourage victims and make things safer for everyone.
Okay, so where do we even start? How do we break that silence?
Sometimes the most powerful thing is the simplest. Just be there for someone. Listen to them. Validate their experience.
That's so true. It's like when you're going through something and someone just says, I believe you. It means the world.
Right. It's like those 3 words change everything. You're creating a safe space where someone can finally be heard and understood. And the article says that's often the first step to breaking down those walls that keep victims silent.
So it's about changing the whole culture around this.
No.
Make reporting bullying not this shameful thing,
Yeah.
but like an act of self-care.
Exactly. Like taking care of yourself is a good thing. It's a strength.
Yeah.
And that brings us to something else the article talks about. Being clear about privacy and safety.
Because even if you feel supported, there's still that fear of what happens next. Will people know it was me? Will anything be done?
Those are real worries. And the article says we have to address them directly. Victims need to know their safety comes first, that things can be kept confidential, that there are systems in place to protect them.
So it's about giving them that reassurance that they're not going to be thrown to the wolves, you know. But sometimes even knowing where to go or what to do can be overwhelming.
For sure, especially when you're already feeling vulnerable and lost. That's where offering practical help can be huge.
Okay, so what does that look like?
It could be as simple as helping them figure out the process, giving them the forms, maybe even going with them when they report it.
Being that support system, that person who can help navigate the system.
Yeah, because sometimes just having someone there makes all the difference. But, even with all the support in the world, it's hard to take that first step if you don't see any hope for the future.
So how do we give them hope?
The article talks about the power of sharing real-life stories. Stories where reporting bullying actually made a difference. It's like proof that things can get better.
Giving them a reason to believe that it's worth it.
Exactly. And then there are the people who don't even know where to turn. They've never heard of helplines or school counselors or support groups.
Right, it's not common knowledge.
So we have to be the ones to connect them to those resources, guide them to the help that's right for them.
Be that bridge to healing and taking back control.
Exactly. This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I think we've learned a lot about how to be better allies, but we're not done yet. The article also dives into the role of bystanders, and that's a whole other can of worms.
Okay, so we've talked about the victim side of things, all the fear and shame and feeling alone.
Right.
But now let's flip it and look at the bystander.
Yeah.
The article makes this point that we all play a part. Either we help keep things quiet or we help people speak up.
And it doesn't let bystanders off the hook either. It really challenges us to think about how we might be contributing to the problem even if we don't mean to. It's like a call to action. You can't just sit back and watch.
Well, there's that quote, right? The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. But sometimes it's not even about just doing something. It's about doing the right thing. And that can be hard to figure out.
Absolutely. The article talks about how bystanders hesitate to get involved for all sorts of reasons, like maybe they're afraid of making things worse or getting targeted themselves. Fear is a powerful thing.
It's like it spreads from the victim to everyone around them. And sometimes we try to cover up that fear by calling it apathy or being indifferent, like it's not my business, I don't want to get involved. But that's how bullying wins.
Exactly. It creates this environment where victims feel like they have nowhere to turn. So how do we change that? How do we turn bystanders into allies?
Well, the article says education is key. We need to teach people how to recognize bullying, even the subtle stuff, because it's not always obvious. It's not always hitting or name calling.
Right. It can be sneaky stuff, like spreading rumors or leaving someone out, or even putting them down but calling it a joke.
Ugh, those are the worst.
They're so damaging because it eats away at your self-esteem over time.
Like death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah.
So once we can spot bullying, how do we give bystanders the courage to do something about it? I like how the article calls them upstanders instead of bystanders.
Me too. It makes it more active. You're not just standing by, you're standing up.
Exactly. It's about going from watching to doing something.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of ways to do that. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, hey, that's not cool, or leave them alone.
Yeah, or you can report it to an adult. But the article makes a good point. You don't always have to confront the bully yourself, especially if you don't feel safe.
So what else can you do?
You can be there for the victim, let them know they're not alone, help them find resources. You can also try to document what's happening if it's safe to do that. So there's proof if they need it.
So it's about finding ways to make a difference without putting yourself in danger. And sometimes those little acts of kindness can mean the world to someone who feels completely alone.
Imagine you're that kid being bullied by the star athlete. You're sitting by yourself at lunch feeling like everyone hates you, and then someone you barely know comes and sits with you, just to talk about normal stuff.
Wow, yeah.
That little act of connection could change everything. It reminds them they're not invisible, that someone cares. And who knows, maybe it'll even inspire other people to be kind too.
Like a ripple effect.
Exactly. It sends the message that bullying won't win, that we have each other's backs,
Man, this deep dive has been a real journey. We started with the victim's experience, all the fear and the shame and loneliness. And now we've come all the way to the idea that anyone can be that source of support. That person who says, I see you and I'm here for you.
It's all about empathy, looking out for each other, speaking up when things are wrong, and refusing to stay silent when we see bullying. That's the kind of world I want to live in. And I think we can all help create it.
I'm with you on that. This has given us so much to think about. How to support victims, how to be upstanders. But the conversation doesn't stop here. Here's something to think about. What if we focus on preventing bullying instead of just reacting to it? What can we do in our own lives, in our schools, in workplaces, and online, to create a world where bullying just doesn't exist? That's what I'm going to be thinking about long after this deep dive, and I hope you will too.